Hoops talk for the streets.
Family, what's good? Welcome back to another edition of Above the Rim. You already know how we do. Brought to you as always. It's your host, Justin, aka Just Blaze. Family, you know the drill. To get in contact with me, you can always hit me up and follow me on Twitter at JustBlaze_513, on IG at JustBlaze513, on Facebook and YouTube. Search Above the Rim Podcast. Also email the show as well. Above the Rim NBA Podcast at gmail.com. Family, tap in and leave a voicemail. The line is always open. 908-718-1592 as well. Joining me this week, family, a special Phoenix Suns segment episode for you. Does amazing work for the Phoenix Suns. Lead Suns writer for the PHNX Sports and co-host of the pod also as well. Shout out to the crew that's there with you as well. Family, make sure you check them out. Last time you were on here, my man JB, I called you the JaVale McGee Whisperer. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. I might have to switch it up to the Okogie Whisperer now, man. My man Gerald Bourguet, how you doing, my brother? Appreciate you.
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate you coming on the episode. I had to get you on. You know what we're here to talk about. Everybody knows what you're here to talk about. So I appreciate you coming back and joining me for another episode, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to do it. The Suns are suddenly relevant again, so that's nice.
There you go. Wait, are you cool with the Okogie Whisper? We got to get that out the way. You cool with that one?
I'm perfectly fine with that. We've been playing great.
There we go. All right, family. Let's get into it. Let's briefly discuss AllStar Weekend first before we get into the Phoenix Suns portion of the episode. Salt Lake City, Utah was the location this year. Many stars were out of the actual game, as we know. Dame Lillard won the three-point shootout. Matt McClung won the slam dunk contest. Team Giannis won the All-Star game. We had Tatum as MVP. Set the All-Star game points record. I saw a fact online. Also, I don't know if you saw that the All-Star Game MVP also won the Finals MVP in like 3 or 4 consecutive years. Well, we hope that's not the case this year if the basketball gods have anything to do with it. But talk to me about what you thought about the All-Star Game. If you had to describe the All-Star Weekend as a whole in one word, GB, give me one word that you would describe All-Star Weekend. Talk to me.
Irrelevant, I feel like is the right word. And it's not even just about Utah. Like, obviously, I wasn't there. I've never been to Utah. Based on what everybody has told me, it's not the best place to hold an event like All-Star Weekend for a number of reasons.
That's for sure.
But this was the first year in a long time, and I've always kind of been one of the last to board this train. But like, between the three-point contest not being the premier event of Saturday, it was kind of a sleeper. It wasn't that great this year.
It wasn't.
Mac McClung saved the weekend, but like, him and Trey Murphy were kind of the only dunkers that really did much during the slam dunk contest. And at the end of the day, a guy like Mac McClung is only going to boost the profile of this type of event so far. And then this talk of like the skills challenge, that hasn't made sense to me for 10 to 15 years now. I don't know what
a terrible event that is. What a kind of event is that, man? It was a snooze, man.
It doesn't make sense. It's not entertaining. Nobody enjoys it at all. And it's one of those things that just needs to be totally scrapped or revamped. Yes. And then the game itself. Like, I'm one of the people that up until recently has been like, it's cool to see stars let loose and have a little fun and enjoy that and not have to worry about getting hurt. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, a layup and three-point line is not entertaining to the fans. The Elam ending has saved the event the first 2 years, but this year it was like the first 3 quarters are irrelevant, and even the fourth quarter this time was irrelevant. So it's just, it needs to be seriously revamped at this point, because like, the players don't really care about the events
at all.
They have no incentive to do so. Like, you hear John Morant and Anthony Edwards saying on the sidelines they're never going to do the slam dunk contest. Yep. And it's like, we got to rethink what we're doing if we want these events to have any staying power or to be interesting next year, because this is kind of the lowest I've seen All-Star Weekend.
Yeah, I agree with you. The lowest I've seen All-Star Weekend, GB, in a long time. So if I had to pick a word to sum up this All-Star Weekend, it would be snooze fest. This whole All-Star Weekend, I'm not going to lie, was a snooze fest. Now, like you said, maybe it was the location. Maybe it was Utah, Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City, we know, is not a prime destination, I would say, for a lot of people. But the cold weather choosing in February. Last year, where was it? Cleveland, I believe it. Yeah, it's still cold in Cleveland around this time too also. But Cleveland is a little bit better than Utah. Next year it's in Indiana, I believe. Then they're not sure who they're going to pick after that. So location probably definitely has something to do with it. But I think more so to the lack of care, I think, to AllStar Weekend. I feel like it's too late in the season, GB. It's way too late. Like, this is what? Game 60, 61, 62 of the season. Since when is AllStar Weekend not at least around the 40 to 50 game mark? Why is it at over 60 games when people come back now, when teams have to reset their strategy, trades happening, resetting the lineups? You can only have 20 games left now to really take care of the rest of the season. So I think that has a lot to do. I know there's a lot of scheduling issues. And then I feel like the season this year, it ends a little bit sooner than it normally does this season. So I don't like that. It's even past the 45 game mark, I think, to me, is a problem with AllStar Weekend. So because of that, it was just a snooze fest as a whole. And the AllStar Game, as you said, no defense. Nobody wants to watch a layup line. And then I talked about it in previous episodes before. I like the East versus West format. They need to go back to that. I talked about it before. I love that. That it kind of sort of created some sense of conference rivalry or whatever the case may be. But now, this fake picking teams aspect, even that was kind of corny. We thought that was good to start. But now, if you watching the draft, were you even intrigued by the live draft? What did it do for you?
No, I mean, the problem was it was too long, right? Like it took forever. It was so drawn out, and they did the thing where the reserves were picked first to make sure nobody felt like they were picked last, which still doesn't make sense. It was random, and like nobody wants to watch a 5.5 hour All-Star game. Like I got bored in the first quarter. Yes. I watched The Last of Us. I came back to the game, and the third quarter was barely getting started. Like
terrible.
It's just too much pageantry and not enough like actual substance to it. And I get All-Star is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be for the fans. It's supposed to be more lighthearted. But at the same time, if these guys don't like actually care or have any incentive to care about the game, this is kind of the product you're going to get.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I don't even know how they're going to fix it. I mean, I feel like they got to go back to the drawing board, but I honestly don't even know how they're going to fix it unless they create some type of incentive for the players, like you said. So All-Star Weekend is a dud for now, especially for the next maybe year or two until they fix that. So let's get to the reason why I brought you here, my man. You're in Arizona. The city is on fire right now, my brother. Just had the Super Bowl over there. I know it's wild around town. Kevin Durant gets traded to the Phoenix Suns in the same week. Brings TJ Warren. Suns pick up Terrence Ross. Darius Bazley, one of the biggest trades in NBA trade deadline history. A lot of people don't even realize that right now. I know they're stuck in the moment, but it is one of the biggest trades in deadline history. It's the type of all-in move that certain teams are not able to make, especially at this juncture of the season. Now, the Suns have been solid going into the break, going 11-4 in their last 15, top 5 record in the West, as we know. You were at the introductory press conference, the Kevin Durant introductory press conference, Gerald. I forgot the number of how many people, but it looked like a couple thousand were there, and the people were hyped. You're around the team all the time. Talk to me about what the vibe in the city is like right now and your thoughts of the press conference scene too being there, because it looked like low-key pandemonium for a second. I was watching the live stream. Let me know, man.
Yeah, it was scenes for sure. Like obviously the week before you had the trade, you had the Super Bowl, you had the Waste Management Open. It felt like all of like Phoenix had become the sports mecca in the US for the week.
Yes.
So that was pretty cool. The press conference itself was something I've never really seen before. And it's the type of kind of fanfare that you typically don't get with this franchise. Like obviously they have an illustrious history, but you know, they had cheerleaders throwing t-shirts. There were 3,000 fans there, like the gorillas doing tricks and throwing merch out to the crowd. Like it was, and there was a highlight package, like bringing out Kevin Durant. And it was very different compared to the tone that he kind of set in the press conference.
Yes.
He said pretty soon into that, he said, I feel like I don't deserve this because as much as I've accomplished in my career, I haven't done anything in a Suns jersey yet. So he's very much approaching it with a head down workers mentality. Like,
Absolutely.
I'm here to prove that I fit in and that I can help this team get to its goal. But yeah, it was a really cool event, something that I haven't really seen the likes of here in Phoenix.
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, looking at it from an outsider's perspective, looking at it, they had the backdrop. It was, listen, I hate to say it wasn't that far, but I saw some people online, a couple of haters, I want to say online, trying to act like it was LeBron James-esque, when he had this. I was like, listen, it wasn't that bad now. Come on. It wasn't. No. I didn't see any fireworks and anything like that. The gorilla was out, though, but I feel like it was all part of the stadium aspect of it. Was it only season ticket holders, or was it open to the public as well?
Yeah, it was only season ticket holders. I think there were 3,000 in attendance, but yeah, no catwalk or fire show or promises of championships.
Not
or anything
5,
like that.
not 6.
Yeah,
none of
that.
None of that at all. And I agree with you, and I respect Kevin Durant's humility in the press conference, because like you said before, he was very humble in the press conference. He said, like you said before, he didn't really need all of that. He didn't feel like he deserved all of that. Well, we know the type of caliber of player that Kevin Durant is. We all know what he brings to a team when he comes to a team. So we know it's warranted from an outsider's analyst fan perspective. We realize the magnitude of a guy like Kevin Durant joining your team. So I appreciate him for being humble about that. But you asked him a question there. Also, I heard you when you asked him that question. You asked him, I believe, what it would feel like to bring a title to Phoenix. And he had a great answer to that as well. So shout out to you for asking that question, man. And he really had a great answer to that.
Yeah, he did. It was, he was basically saying, like, I've won 2 of these, so I know what it can do for a franchise and for a city. But, like I said, he's coming here to prove that he fits in with this group.
Exactly.
And he said he's more interested in the day-by-day process, the step-by-step of getting to that point to where you can contend for a title rather than looking ahead now. And that's kind of always the approach that Monty and the Suns have taken as far as doing the next right thing. So obviously the next right thing for him is to get healthy. We're assuming that he's back on Friday, first game after the All-Star break. But they've only got, 22 games to kind of figure things out, get their chemistry on the same page and try to make a title run. It's very rare that a player of his magnitude is traded at the trade deadline. And it's very rare that team goes on to win a title when you see a midseason trade like that. So history is kind of against them in that regard, but I do think they have the talent and the pieces to make it interesting for sure.
Of course. And what they do have on their side is that a couple of other teams also have some gelling issues and some chemistry issues that they have to sort out. So it's a lot of teams that are going through that as well. And one of the highlights of the press conference though was them booing Nick Friedel. I gotta say, that shit had me laughing because I was low key booing myself. I'm not gonna lie. I was mad that he infiltrated the press conference. but we all know why. We all know he's a KD reporter, I guess. So I guess he's infiltrated you guys over there in Phoenix, Arizona, man. So let's talk a little bit about the on-court fit with Kevin Durant inserted into the Phoenix offense. Now, obviously, everybody knows what a player like Kevin Durant brings to the table. 36-5, 55% shooting is welcomed on any unit, on any team. But inserting a player of this caliber instantly alters the entire dynamic of the current offense of your individual team, right? So I feel like only a few select teams can actually make Kevin Durant a seamless transition into their offense. It's a team like the Suns and a team also like, obviously, the Warriors, Golden State Warriors, or a team like that are one of the rare few teams who can seamlessly implement a guy like Kevin Durant. So let's talk about who has to make the biggest adjustments on the roster with KD coming on board, right? So a few of the players are going to have to adapt. I wanted to ask you, who do you feel like has to make the biggest adjustment, in your opinion, with KD moving into the lineup? Or who do you feel like has to make any type of adjustments in the lineup with Kevin Durant inserting on board?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think if you look at Chris Paul's season, normally you would say him because he's probably going to be getting less shots and focusing more on facilitating. But that's kind of the transition he's been making all season long.
Exactly.
And I think his job gets even easier now with Kevin Durant because Mikal Bridges was great. He was learning how to facilitate and make plays and initiate offense a lot more. But Kevin Durant is obviously well seasoned in that regard, and being able to do that, being able to get his shots off at any time. I think it might be DA. I don't know if his role is going to change as much, but there's more of an emphasis on him doing the little things as far as setting good screens, rolling hard, and taking advantage of all the space that he's going to have now. Because, you think about a Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton pick and roll, that's hard enough to stop when you have just 3 regular shooters on the wing. But if one of those guys is Devin Booker and the other guy is Kevin Durant,
come on now,
where's the help going to come from? Where's the double going to come from? It's tough, because Chris Paul is a guy that can swing the ball where it needs to be if you double him on the screen. DA is a guy that can capitalize if you don't send a second guy at him when he's rolling. And Kevin Durant and Devin Booker on the wings, like, they're guys that can absolutely attack bad closeouts or help defense in that regard. And that's not even mentioning the fact that Book and Kevin Durant are both really good in the pick and roll as well.
Yes, so come on now. Yes, absolutely.
It's hard to figure out how teams are going to be able to stop them, especially in the playoffs. It honestly might not even matter who the 5th guy is, whether it's Josh Okogie, Terrence Ross, or Torrey Craig, as long as those guys can hit an open 3 every now and then. Like, this is a really difficult offense to stop. I think Booker will probably need to adjust maybe the most, just because, he's the high volume, high shot attempt guy. And now Kevin Durant's coming in, and he should probably be the number 1 option. But man, if Devin Booker is your second or your first option, you're doing pretty darn good.
Can't go wrong there. You can't go wrong there.
No,
not at all. So you made a couple of great points, right? I want to touch on a few of those points. DeAndre Ayton first. To me, it's never, and I think to a lot of people, it's never been about his skill. It's always about his will when it comes to DeAndre Ayton. To me, you brought it up a little bit when you talked about him. He has to make rebounding a priority, especially in this lineup, in my opinion. And he has to actually care about it now more than ever before. Too many times we've seen DeAndre Ayton fail to make that extra effort to get that rebound, to run to that closeout at the 3-point line, to box somebody out that we know he needs to be boxing out. Now more than ever, it's going to be scrutinized with DeAndre Ayton. Those little things that he may or may not want or like to do, right? So on this particular team, in this particular lineup, yes, he can have his 16, 17 points. It's probably going to go down a little bit, maybe to 14 or something like that. But is he going to make that extra effort that we all know he needs to make on offense and on defense? Because it's on both ways. The little things, the screening, as you talked about before, those box outs, those closeouts. Are we going to see that extra effort? Because we know Suns Twitter, a lot of people are going to point to DeAndre Ayton as visibly as times where he's not moving up to par when it comes on the offense and the defensive side of the ball. So do you think he can make that extra effort now with a little bit of less of responsibility in the offense?
Yeah, I think so. And it's always been an interesting question with him, because what he does that makes him so effective are the little, normal big man duties that he has said in the past he doesn't really care for. The screening, the rolling, but also running full speed in transition and sealing, or attacking the offensive glass and making an impact that way. Like, those are things that he does, that when he does those things, the Suns' ceiling gets pushed, through the roof.
Absolutely.
And when he doesn't do those things, it kind of minimizes their margin for error a little bit. So I do think he can. I think even before the Kevin Durant trade, the last 7 or 8 games, he was really starting to turn a corner, because this season he's been pretty inconsistent. His rim protection hasn't been great. His rebounding.
We're not going to talk about his lack of blocks.
Yeah, it's been rough, but I think the last handful of games on both ends, he looked as engaged as I've seen him all season. And I think that's only going to increase now that, 2 of his friends, Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges, are gone.
Yeah.
And in their place is a guy like Kevin Durant, who, much like Booker and Chris Paul, will expect big things from everybody he's sharing the floor with.
Yes.
So I think that, that time of leniency as far as like, oh, I missed a screen, or, oh, I missed a box out, that's done. And we've seen DA turn the switch on in the playoffs before. So I'm optimistic that he's going to be able to take this in stride, continue playing the way he has been recently, and kick it up a notch once the postseason starts.
I agree with you. I think he really can. I think right now is going to be a renewed focus in DA that we've never seen before. We hope, but I think he will really do that, because I feel like he knows his game time right now. Everybody's going to be looking at you. The spotlight is on the Phoenix Suns as a whole. So I think he's going to make that extra effort. And talking about Chris Paul a little bit in his role, this is the first time we've seen a 4-time scoring champ and a 4-time assist champ playing together right now. We know CP is going to be taking, can't even say more of the playmaking duties, because he already does majority of the playmaking duties on the team. He might even take maybe a slight step back in terms of playmaking duties, especially when you have KD in the mid post and the high post, when you have Book maybe in the mid post a lot more. Maybe one of those two guys are playing a little bit more with the second unit with Chris Paul, maybe in those early second quarter rotations. To me, when I look at Chris Paul in this lineup with Kevin Durant coming in, he's got to shoot more threes with Kevin Durant coming in my opinion. This year, he's shooting around 4 threes a game. In his 2 years in Houston, he was shooting over 6 threes per game. Corner threes, pull-up threes on the break, they need to be taken a lot more, especially like I said before, with KD posting up, with Book posting up. He might find himself open a lot more than he's ever been before. So somebody needs to get into Chris Paul's head to shoot a couple of threes. GB, when you're on the practice floor, make sure you let him know to just set to shoot more threes, because we need to see it, man. So I think he's going to have a lot more opportunities as well to really increase his three-point attempts and his three-point shooter with KD coming on board.
Yeah, that's a fascinating storyline for me, because I feel like DA is going to capitalize on the extra space in the pick and roll. I feel like Book and KD are going to adjust to playing together. My biggest question mark is, will Chris Paul be able to adjust? Will they be able to save him a little bit more, save his legs and his energy for being that fourth guy that makes a defense pay? Because if Chris Paul getting to his mid-range is your fourth option, your offense is probably pretty dangerous.
Come on now.
He's kind of, especially early in the season, he struggled to adjust to what you're kind of talking about as far as letting it fly from three. His three-point release is a little bit slower these days. It takes him a little more time to get that heave up.
Come on, man. You know those hips start churning a little bit.
But he's shot the ball pretty efficiently this season, a lot better than the last two, actually, in Phoenix. And so he's started to get more comfortable with catch and shoot opportunities. And that is going to be huge, like you said, when, Kevin Durant, Booker are creating plays, DA's rolling. Who's the guy that's open? It's Chris Paul or the fifth guy. So if he's able to make them pay with a three or with a pump fake and a dribble to the mid-range to where he's comfortable, like those are the plays that are going to be backbreakers, because we all know Chris Paul can pass. If he can be a scorer and an off-ball playmaker, like this offense is going to be unstoppable.
Yeah, I agree with you. I want to see Chris Paul coming off some screens. Maybe we'll see that. Maybe the basketball gods will give us Chris Paul coming up off a screen. I'm going to have to record this and maybe we'll get one. Devin Booker, we touched on him a little bit too. I don't think he really has to make much of a transition with KD coming on board. He can play off ball. He can pretty much do everything. I don't think it will be a tough transition for him at all. Just maybe on the defensive side. Not really tough, but just taking on more assignments. And one thing briefly before we move on from here on what has to adjust in the Suns offense, I think transition points is something that I'm looking for as well in the Suns offense. They rank last in their possessions. The percentage of their possessions that have been in the fast break has been last, or I think bottom 2 in the league or something like that. They're second to last in transition points, I believe. So we know KD, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, but they're not really above the break type of players. So we know Mikal accounted for a lot of those fast break points, a lot of those transition points, Cam Johnson as well. So that's something that I'm looking for in the offense. If they can really substitute those transition buckets that they lost from Mikal and Cam Johnson with maybe a Josh Okogie, because you're the whisperer, so maybe we could get him on some fast break transition buckets there. So I'm looking out for the Suns by increasing that as well.
Yeah, the Suns definitely have to find a way to push the tempo, and we've seen them do that when Chris Paul has missed stretches and then he's come back and they've kind of reverted to playing a little bit slower. I think this team obviously has the tools to be a very dangerous half-court offense, and they have been. But to your point, like looking through Kevin Durant's buckets and assists this season with Brooklyn, a lot of them came in transition on both fronts. So if they can find a way to push the tempo, get KD out in transition where nobody's going to rise to meet him at the rim, or to run the fast break, which he can also do, that's an easy way to get points. It will have to start with the defense, obviously, getting stops, which is probably one of the bigger questions with that trade-off that they made.
Absolutely. So they're definitely going to have to really have some more transition buckets and really make an effort to really get their transition buckets. And we'll see if they continue to do that moving forward. So let's talk about the battle for the fifth starter. Who should it be? So there have been some slight debates on Twitter on who that fifth starter should be. Because believe it or not, the fifth starter on the Phoenix Suns lineup might alter their lineup a little bit, or could be a very, very interesting cog in their lineup. So there have been some slight debates on Twitter about it. People have been arguing on who they want to be the fifth starter. A few people have some different opinions. I think some people were saying Craig, Okogie, T. Ross, D. Lee. So talk to me on what you think about who you think will be the fifth starter in the lineup, or who you expect to be the fifth starter, or maybe who you want to be the fifth starter in this lineup with Ayton, KD, D-Book, and Chris Paul.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the core four is locked in. The question is, how do you replace some of the things that you lost with a Mikal Bridges and a Cam Johnson? Obviously, the two things that come to mind are point of attack defense and three-point shooting with those two guys. The Suns really lost that element as far as Mikal being a part of the trade. Kevin Durant is a very underrated defender. He's a good rim protector. He's actually better in terms of blocks than DeAndre Ayton is. But you need somebody to take on the opposing team's best guard, ball handler, or wing player. And right now, that onus would have to fall to Devin Booker or Kevin Durant. And I'm not sure you want to put that on them, considering what you'll want to get out of them offensively. So for me, Josh Okogie is the guy that fills that particular hole, because he is a guy that, he's only 6'4", I think, but he's got like a 7'1" wingspan or something crazy like that. So he has the athleticism, the leaping ability, the wingspan, the length, the instincts to make up for the size that you're losing on that end. And offensively, if he can do what he's done over the last handful of games, most of which he's been starting, that you can survive with that. And actually, he's the guy that could really make you pay, because as much as Chris Paul as the fourth option can be deadly, if Josh Okogie keeps playing the way that he has been, scoring in double figures in the last 4 or 5 games, he's going to be the last straw that breaks the camel's back. So I think in 2013, he's shooting above 40% from three. So it's not like it's a couple game aberration. If he can just knock down open looks, attack the basket, get to the free throw line, and wreak havoc defensively, I think he's the best option for the fifth starter. But I do think there's something to be said for Torrey Craig being here, the last season or two. Monty has a lot of trust in him. He really likes Craig. Craig makes some questionable decisions with the ball.
Oh, does he? Especially at the end of games. When he was in Brooklyn and he had that turnover at the end of the game, I was right there yelling at Torrey. I was literally right behind the bench at that game. We were in a whole section, a Suns section over here at the Barclays. So I agree, but go ahead.
And he does that. He just makes some questionable passes and he tries to dribble too much sometimes when he's pressured. But he is defensively, he did a great job on Kawhi Leonard the other night, the last game before the break. I think Kawhi was 0 for 9 to start before he got hot a little bit later. So it does kind of depend on where the Suns want to play Kevin Durant also. Would they rather have Torrey Craig play the 4 and KD move up to the 3? Would they rather have him be more of a 4 and have Okogie in there? It depends. And I don't think we can rule out Terrence Ross just yet either. He came off the bench in their last game, his first game, the last before the break. But he literally just got into town the day before, whatever it was. And the fact that Monty, James Jones, and Matt Ishbia all played a role in recruiting him tells me that they were promising him, look, hey, if you come here, you'll get a substantial role. I don't know if it's a 6-man role or a starting role. But Monty was saying he feels like Terrence Ross's defense is underrated because he's been playing on rebuilding teams for a while. And they gave him pretty much free reign. I think he's shot 16 or 17 times.
He was letting them things fly in that game. He only played, how many attempts? He had 17 in the first?
Yeah, he had 16 or 17
off the bench? Come on, T-Ross.
Yeah.
Let him fly, T-Ross.
So they're definitely letting him get up shots. And James Jones was saying they value what he brings offensively. I think it'll be Okogie, but it could be a situation where it's matchup dependent, even though Monty did say I need to kind of narrow my rotation down and stick with it so guys can build chemistry. But yeah, it's hard to say. Yeah. Any one of those three could be it. I think it'll be Okogie, but we're just going to have to wait and see.
Listen, GB, we already dubbed you as the Okogie Whisperer. So listen, yes, are you saying it right now? It's probably going to happen now just because you said it on the show right here. So I'm not going to lie. That's my pick also, Okogie for that fifth starting spot. I think, like you said, and you put it greatly, he has all the tools that you need. He brings a lot of the things to the table that the Suns are missing with Mikal Bridges, the point of attack defender. If you can hit those threes, some spacing. Mikal Bridges is leading the league in corner threes. A lot of people don't know that this season from, I don't know if it was the left or the right corner. Tobias Harris is the other corner, but Okogie is going to have to supplement a lot of that production, especially in those corner threes and point of attack, as you said, as well. Craig, also a decent option. I think he does, like you said, play into the loyalty factor when it comes to Monty. You know, Monty is a little bit stubborn with these rotations at times, man. Mm-hmm. But I think Monty alluded to it also before. He said it might be matchup dependent, whether it's Okogie or whether it's Torrey Craig. So when they play teams like the Mavs, I don't know if Okogie may be the right guy for Luka. He can annoy him a little bit, but he may be a little bit too small. You said he was 6'4" before. We know Luka's a big 6'7", 6'8", big body on the floor. So we might need a Torrey Craig there. But I'm not going to lie. Torrey Craig, he has a tendency to get worked at times by the other team's opposing offensive perimeter threat. So I'm a little worried at times, but I think it's going to be a fifth starter by committee. And when we talk about the rotation, when we get to around the last 10 games of the season, leading into the playoffs, the rotations are gonna really shrink. Monty Williams is probably gonna have to go about 9 or 10 deep into the rotation, maybe 10, probably 9, around 9 or 10 deep. And I think he's gonna have to make a lot of interesting decisions when it comes to lineups and rotation. And there's gonna have to be some people who fall out of the Suns rotation. So are there any certain players that off the bat come to your mind? Who do you think off the bat is going to probably fall out of the Suns rotation once Monty starts to shrink it down?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one right off the bat, Darius Bazley. He's the new guy. He hasn't been able to get in their first 2 games, so it doesn't bode well for him. He's kind of a younger, upside flyer type guy, and I think that move of trading Dario was to kind of ease their luxury tax bill a little bit, but he stands out. Yeah. I think Ish Wainwright is another guy. Yeah. He's been one of the first 2 subs off the bench the last handful of games. But obviously those are games played without Kevin Durant, and the fact that he has officially run out of games to play on his 2-way contract, they're going to have to convert him to that 15th roster spot if they want him to play for them again this season. So that automatically hurts his chances.
Yes.
I think Jock Landale might be in trouble.
I was thinking that also.
You know, the Suns have kind of gone with 2 backup centers all season. They've switched back and forth. Biz is a guy that can come in and have an impact no matter how long it's been since the last time he's played. Jock is more of a rhythm player who I think needs to get those minutes if he's going to be effective. So if the Suns are going to go with Biz, you know, Jock, it would be rough for them to dust him off whenever they need him in case of emergency.
Yeah.
But Biz does give them a little bit more strength, a little bit of athleticism, and the obvious shot blocking. He's been incredible on that front. So those are the 3 that kind of come to mind right off the bat. And I do think Landry Shamet, once he's healthy,
I was getting ready to bring him up. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's like, they've got Terrence Ross, they've got Damian Lee. Those are 2 shooters at the 2-guard position that can really light it up. And Shamet has not played very well since he's been traded to Phoenix. And he's also coming off a major, well, not major foot injury, but it's kept him out for quite a while.
Yes,
so.
Absolutely. And I think in regards to Shamet, I think he may be one person out of that group who may have an opportunity to sneak in the rotation if he can outplay campaign. So if he can provide and play that backup guard minute, so when Chris Paul comes out a little bit early, if he can play that backup guard and have another shooter in the space, because I like campaign, but he's no shooter on the floor. When Kevin Durant gets double teamed, when Devin Booker gets double teamed, he can hit some shots, but he's not necessarily a lockdown shooter. And I would be more secure with having Shamet taking those open jumpers over campaign. So if he uses his time wisely, he can maybe. But we know how Monty plays his favorite, so probably campaign is going to get those minutes anyway. We talk about Bays. Unfortunately, I agree with you, man. I'm a little sad about that. I'm a little mad about that because I actually really like Darius Bazley in this lineup. When they made the trade for Dario Saric, I liked what he was bringing, what he can bring to the table to the Phoenix Suns lineups. Because when in that season, he played a lot with Chris Paul. He played very well, and he really grew up offensively and defensively that year, as it did also SGA in that year with Chris Paul stayed over there in OKC. So I think, if Monty wanted to get a little freaky with the rotation, I feel like he could throw Bays in maybe some backup 5 minutes, maybe have a long athletic wing. He is 6'10", 6'11", with a long wingspan with minutes with KD. I think it could work. If you want to have a little bit more of an athletic lineup and somebody who can also space the floor as well, I think he can contribute in 10 to 15 minutes. I think he could do a little something, but I'm afraid Monty Williams is not going to give him a chance. But I think if given the opportunity, maybe in the playoffs, I think he can, give you a solid 10 to 20 minutes a night.
Yeah, he's a guy that, we might not get to see very much of him. He might be, like you said, dusted off in case of emergency as far as like we need a stop or we need to go small with a small ball 5, because he can play that position and he's been really good as a rim protector this season. It's just on the offensive end, he plays like a wing who thinks his handle may be a little bit better than it is.
He tends to dribble a little bit, the dribble drive a little bit. Yes.
That gets him into trouble, but he can be an effective, spot up, standstill shooter that spreads the floor in that way. It's just tough because this team is deeper than I think people realize. So finding minutes for everybody is going to be tough for sure.
Yeah, listen, we might need Lord Biombo to rough him up a little bit in practice, man. Let him get able to handle some of those post-ups in practice, and maybe he could play some small ball 5. So when it comes to the Phoenix Suns, they're a well-balanced team. They've been in the past couple of years on both sides of the ball. And one can make a case now with the addition of Kevin Durant, TJ Warren, T. Ross, and those individuals. One can make the case that they're a more offensive-minded team overall right now, if one wanted to look at it from that way. So when you're looking at this lineup, this past couple of years, like I said before, they've been a very balanced team. I don't know if it was top 5 in both years, in the back-to-back years. I know they were top 10 in both offense and defense. I don't remember if it was top 5, but I know it was definitely top 10. But now, like with Kevin Durant, they're going to shift to more, not going to, but may have shift to more a offensive-minded team, perception-wise in the media. So do you feel like the Suns at all, with the arrival of KD, do you feel like they have to revamp, or do you feel like they have to create a new team identity with the arrival of KD, in your opinion?
Oh, I mean, I think with Kevin Durant, obviously a piece like that, your identity is going to change a little bit in terms of what you're able to do. But I think it enhances the systems that they have in place on both ends of the floor. And I think, like you said, Phoenix is one of the better suited teams to absorb a player who honestly has been adaptable throughout his career, and that's something not every superstar can say. You need to build a particular way around certain superstars. Kevin Durant is a guy that if you want to put shooters around him and let him operate with the ball, he can do that. If you have another star ball handler and you want him to be off the ball, he can do that too. If you need him to play small ball center minutes, he can protect the rim. You need him to be a wing defender, he can do that too. Like, he's been extremely flexible. And so I think with the culture that the Suns have, the systems that they have in place, their sets and their schemes, he's going to fit in really nicely with a lot of that. Obviously, there are things to figure out in terms of he's not going to be taking on Mikal Bridges' point of attack defensive role. But you can be a lot more creative in terms of, like, Mikal Bridges was already deadly in a lot of the elbow sets that they would run for him. They call them the Mikalbo. Now you're putting, now you're putting Kevin Durant, who's an all-time great and is shooting some of the highest percentages of his career on contested jumpers in those spots. Like, it's almost unfair what they're going to be able to do with him. So I do think it's a situation where his arrival doesn't change your identity, but it enhances it, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I totally understand what you mean. And I agree on all those points. Excuse me. When it comes to the identity also as well, one thing I was thinking about when looking at this team, right, is I want to know who's going to fully replace Jay Crowder and his defensive communication, right? So we know Jay Crowder, his value isn't quantified in stats. His value is quantified in presence, in defensive communication. We know how instrumental he was in that playoff series against the Lakers in more of a mental aspect. We know getting in LeBron James' head, getting in Drummond's head, and all of those boys. Yeah. We know how important Jay Crowder was to that. So I do feel like the Suns are going to lose a little bit of that edge factor in terms of defensive communication. Now, technically, that's going to be KD's position now, probably if he's playing the 4. He's never really been a vocal guy, KD, but KD, he roughs him up. He can yell at some guys. I know very well because I'm here in Brooklyn. I'm here at a lot of these games in Brooklyn. So KD jaws at a lot of these brothers, but you don't want to make that his focal point. You want him to focus on other things throughout the game. So that's something that I'm watching for as well, is who's going to take that defensive communication slack that Jay Crowder once had, because Milwaukee's going to benefit from that now.
Yeah, and it's a good point because, they've kind of been missing his defensive communication all season. Like they've never been they have good point of attack defenders, but they've never been a team that's like stifling and keeping you from getting into the paint. The strength of their defense has been their ability to rotate and keep the offense in rotation without getting where they want. Yeah, and Crowder was a huge part of that. I think associate coach Kevin Young said he's the best I've ever seen in this league in terms of his ability to communicate, understand rotations, make the right plays in those regards. So they've been missing that all season. I think they recovered from it, but now you've lost another 2 really great individual and team defenders in Mikal and Cam Johnson, guys that have been in the system for years, who know the rotations and whatnot. So it is going to be a learning process and a quick one over these last 22 games in terms of, okay, KD, TJ Warren, Terrence Ross, here's what we do. Here's where you need to be. Here are the guys that you're now playing with that you haven't played with before. So it will be a little bit of an adjustment process. I think the offense has more than enough firepower to make up for it. But come playoff time, you're going to want to make sure everybody's on the same page in terms of those rotations. So it might take them simplifying things the first 5-10 games out of the break and then building on it from there.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said that any better. Yeah, so we're going to see how they replace that defensive communication from Crowder. So rounding it out a little bit, let's talk about who we think the Suns' toughest opponent would be in the Western Conference in the series. When I look at the landscape of the Western Conference, there's a lot of change right now. Obviously, we know Russ is moving over there to the Clippers. You still got the Grizzlies. You still got the Nuggets. You still got the Warriors if they sneak in. The Lakers, who knows if they can sneak in. Got the Clippers also there as well. The Sacramento Kings, sneaky in the Western Conference. There's a lot of teams that are really formidable opponents in the Western Conference. So when I look at, if I had to choose a team, I forgot what I was about to say. If I had to choose a toughest opponent, if I had to choose who I think, me personally, that's what I was trying to say. If I had a blame flop. If I had to choose a toughest opponent for the Phoenix Suns in this playoff series, I think it's going to be the Memphis Grizzlies, in my opinion. Let me tell you why. I know a lot of people are down on the Grizzlies right now, but to me, when Steven Adams gets back in this lineup, because a lot of people are not accounting for his loss, their physicality and their rebounding ability, to me, can be a problem for the Phoenix Suns in a playoff series, in a playoffs matchup. Because KD, he's a solid rebounder, but he's not a phenomenal rebounder. He's a little lanky, as we know. DeAndre Ayton, he's a solid rebounder, but he's not a phenomenal rebounder. Lord Biyombo, he's a solid rebounder, but he's not a phenomenal rebounder. So I'm a little bit worried in a matchup against the Memphis Grizzlies. And also that star, Ja Morant. I don't trust Josh Okogie to really stop Ja Morant in a playoff series. And because of all the hassle that a Ja Morant can create, I'm a little bit worried about a matchup. So if there's one team I don't want the Suns to face in the series in this upcoming playoffs, to me it would be the Memphis Grizzlies. So to you, who do you think would be the Suns' toughest opponent in the playoff series coming up this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are 3 that come to mind in terms of rough matchups or teams that you probably wouldn't want to face. The Nuggets, obviously, number 1, just because they're the top team in the West.
I'm not worried about the Nuggets, bro. I'm really not.
You know, I think the Suns match up well with them, but I don't want to write them off just because, you know.
I mean, not get disrespectful.
Yeah. Well, because, like, I mean, I get it, though, because DA has been one of the few guys in the league who's been able to limit what Nikola Jokic can do. You're not going to stop a guy like that, but they know how to make life tough on him. I don't really have much faith in terms of Jamal Murray staying healthy or being as effective as we've seen him in the playoffs before. And Michael Porter Jr., as much as he's improved a little bit defensively this year, he's still a guy that the Suns know how to pick on and turn into a pigeon in a playoff series. So
pick and roll.
That's a tough one. They are a deeper team for sure, and they've been really good at home. I think they've only lost 4 games at home this season, and they will have home court advantage. So them, the Clippers are another team. I'm a little less worried about them, oddly, since they
with Russell Jordan.
Yeah. I am. I really am. I don't get that fit at all. He's not a good defender. He turns the ball over way too much. He can't shoot threes. Like, I think the Suns would welcome a matchup if Russ is their starting point guard for the whole series. But, you know, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, when fully healthy, are still very good. They have a lot of depth. They have a lot of interchangeable wing guys, got a lot of shooting. They got better at the trade deadline with Eric Gordon and Plumlee. And Tyronn Lue is a great coach. So that's a tough one. And I don't want to overlook the Pelicans because they were the number one team in the West.
Yes.
That's a tough matchup. They were the number one team in the West. They would have revenge on their minds for what happened last year if they did meet up. If Zion is healthy, no one on the Suns is stopping that dude. And then they play kind of similar to what you were saying with the Grizzlies. They attack the offensive glass and make life difficult. So those are the 3 that I would say those will probably be the toughest matchups for Phoenix.
I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at any of those choices, man. I'm not mad at that at all. So I still think they could come out on top of any one of those matchups, but it's going to be a bloodbath in the West as a whole. So going into Friday's matchup, right? Most likely it might be the streets. The birds are talking that it probably will be Kevin Durant's first game in the Phoenix Suns uniform, right? So let's talk about what can we expect, what you expect to see from Kevin Durant in game 1 coming up against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Hopefully it will be in that game where Kevin Durant does make his arrival. What, if anything, are you expecting to see from Kevin Durant going into this game 1?
Yeah, I mean, I think the baseline expectation is just a lot of the individual scoring prowess that we know to expect from him. Obviously, he won't know all of the Suns' offense by that point in time. Hopefully, we'll get to see him run some of those elbow actions that they ran from Mikal to make his life a little easier, because going through the Brooklyn film, so many of his buckets are in a high pick and roll or just give him the ball on the elbow, on the block, extended, and let him go to work. And that can be kind of taxing for a guy, even a guy like KD who's averaging just south of 30 points a game. So I am interested to see how the Suns work him into a lot of the stuff they do, what kind of pick and roll actions they have running for him. I do think he'll probably, if he does play, be on a little bit of a minutes restriction, but you know, Monty's minutes restrictions are kind of flimsy. So we'll see.
I know. I do feel like they are going to put a minutes restriction on him, of course, probably a 20 to 25 minute. We hopefully Monty busts through that minutes restriction if they're going to need it, but they may not even need it. You never know. But yeah, I'm expecting to see some elbow action, as you said before. I'm expecting to see definitely some isolation, because I think he's going to be very comfortable in those isolating buckets, because you're never going to lose that feel of being in the mid-range. And listen, I'm ready to see mid-range after mid-range after mid-range. All right, GB? That's what I'm ready to see. So I'm excited for this first game coming up with Kevin Durant making his arrival. And I think the whole city is excited. Of course, obviously the team is going to be excited. I'm just hopeful that they're ready and they come to play and they don't let any of the distractions bother them coming in the team. Because OKC, sneaky team, and we know they can win some games, and we know they're going to have some fire with SGA going against CP3. We already know how he is. So I'm expecting to see some good things from Kevin Durant, probably a minutes restriction, as we said before. But I think we're going to get some solid play in game 1, because KD's a hooper, man. If he's ready to go, he's ready to go. So I'm definitely ready to see that mid-range attack, like I said before. The first beautiful assist of a double team of a KD mid-post up. Double team. Book is open on one wing. Ayton is open in the middle. Mass Okogie is open in the corner. CP3 above the break. I'm ready to see it, my man. So I know you're excited to see KD's first game.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's going to be a blast, and the atmosphere is going to be pretty electric, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I wish it was a home game, but it doesn't matter. And the Suns do have a tough. Wait, is it a home game against OKC?
It is a home game.
Oh, it is a home game. Oh, you could have corrected me, man. Oh, I thought it was on the road. Oh, it's a home game. Oh, even better. Yeah. Oh, okay. So we know you're going to be there then, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, the Suns have a tough stretch coming up, tough road trip coming up also as well. I believe 4 out of the next 5 is on the road. Got a tough Milwaukee matchup coming up, a tough Dallas matchup as well. So it's about to be some smoke in those matchups. So, we ready to get it rocking, man. I'm excited, man. I can't wait. I'm ready to see. I know you're gonna put out some fire articles when it comes to that. So yeah, GB, man, I appreciate the time as always. It was a pleasure. You're welcome back anytime, bro. You know I'm probably gonna have to bring you back on again when we get to this playoff room. We gotta talk some real good stuff when it comes to this playoffs. When it comes to playoff time. So I appreciate you making the time, and I appreciate you coming on the episode again, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And family, make sure you go follow the PHNX Sports, the site, the pod, all of the fellows on there as well. Make sure you check out my man Gerald Bourguet's work. He does excellent stuff. I know he's hot on Twitter right now because KD's over there. So all of those KD stands flew over there to Phoenix, to the Valley. So we know you're going to be hot on Twitter. So I appreciate the time again, my man. And family, make sure you go check out Gerald's content as well. As like I said, this is another edition of Above the Rim, family. And we have